Had not slept in 3 days. His eyes burned. His head hurt. But sleep was a luxury he could not afford. Not when his ship needed fuel, his crew needed pay, and still owed him 80,000 credits. The orbital station, 7, floated in the cold darkness of space like a giant metal flower. Ships of all sizes came and went through its many docking ports. Traders, smugglers, pirates, and nobles all walked its crowded corridors. It was a place where nobody asked questions and everybody had secrets. Stood at the viewport of his ship, the Silent Fortune, and watched the station grow larger as they approached. Behind him, he heard footsteps. He did not need to turn around to know who it was. "You look terrible," said. She was his first mate, his pilot, and the closest thing he had to a friend in this cold universe. She was tall, with short black hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Thank you for noticing," replied without turning around. "When did you last eat?" "I had coffee." "That is not food." Finally turned to face her. "I will eat when pays me my money. 6 months, 6 months that bastard has been running from me, across 3 star systems. Do you know how much fuel that cost us?" Crossed her arms. "I know exactly how much. I am the one who keeps the accounts, remember." From somewhere deeper in the ship, a third voice called out, "Are we fighting again? Because I am trying to fix the water recycler and I cannot concentrate with all this drama." Park appeared from a side corridor, wiping grease from her hands with a dirty rag. She was younger than both of them, small and thin, with messy hair tied back in a ponytail. She looked harmless. This was useful because was perhaps the most dangerous person on the ship, not with weapons but with computers. There was no security system in the galaxy that she could not break. "We are not fighting," said. "I am trying to make the captain eat food like a normal human being." "Good luck with that," muttered. The Silent Fortune docked at 7 without trouble, paid the docking fee with credits they could barely spare, and led his crew into the station. The corridors were packed with beings of every shape and size. Humans were common enough, but there were also the tall, thin with their silver skin, the stocky with their 4 arms, and dozens of other species that did not recognize. They pushed through the crowds until they reached a cantina called the Golden Nebula. It was an expensive place, full of soft music and clean tables. The kind of place where did not belong, but his contact had told him that would be here and was not leaving without his money. He spotted immediately. The man sat alone at a corner table, nursing a drink and looking nervous. Was older than, with gray in his hair and deep lines on his face. They had served together in the war, back when humanity was still fighting for its place among the stars. They had been friends once, then had cheated at cards, lost badly, and promised to pay back. That was 6 months ago. Walked to the table and sat down across from, stood behind him like a silent warning, wandered off to order drinks, pretending not to be involved. Said, his voice was tired, "I knew you would find me eventually." "You made it very difficult," replied. 3 star systems. I have been chasing you for 3 star systems." "I know. I am sorry." "I do not want your apology. I want my 80,000 credits." Looked down at his drink. He did not speak for a long moment. When he finally raised his eyes, saw something unexpected in them. Fear, real fear. "I do not have the money," said quietly. "Then we have a problem." "Wait, please. I have something better, something worth much more than 80,000 credits." Leaned back in his chair. He had heard these kinds of offers before. They usually led to trouble. "I am listening." Glanced around nervously, then leaned forward and spoke in a whisper. "I work for Duke now, security consultant. His yacht is docked here at the station." "The Duke of the Dominion?" asked, her voice sharp with surprise. "You work for that monster?" Winced. "I needed the job. After the war, there were not many options for old soldiers like me." Waved his hand impatiently. "Get to the point." "The Duke has a collection, rare things from across the galaxy, art, weapons, artifacts, But his most prized possession is not a thing, it is a person. Felt his stomach tighten. A slave. Not just any slave, a female, her name is. The silence that followed was heavy. Even who had returned with drinks stopped moving. That is impossible, said slowly. They are extinct. The Dominion killed them all 100 years ago. Not all of them, replied. Survived. She was hidden, protected by people who cared about her. But eventually the Duke's hunters found her. She has been his prisoner for 5 years now. Remembered the stories about they had been a peaceful species known for their telepathic abilities. They could read minds, sense emotions, and communicate without words. The Dominion had feared them, so they had destroyed them. Every man, woman, and child. It had been one of the greatest crimes in galactic history. And now one survivor was being kept in a cage. Why are you telling me this? Asked. Because she is worth millions on the black market. Think about it. The last in existence. There are collectors who would pay anything for her, scientists who would pay even more. Paused. But that is not why you should help her. Then why? Because the Duke is going to sell her. Not to a collector, to weapons developers. They want to study her telepathy. They want to find a way to copy it, to use it for war. His voice broke slightly. They will cut her apart, they will experiment on her until there is nothing left, and then the really will be extinct forever. Sat very still. He could feel watching him, waiting for his response. I am a smuggler, he said finally. Not a hero, I just want my money. Nodded slowly, he looked defeated. I understand, I am sorry I wasted your time. Stood up, come on, he said to his crew. We are leaving. They left the cantina and walked back through the crowded corridors toward their ship. Nobody spoke. The station's lights flickered overhead, casting strange shadows on the walls. That night lay in his bunk and stared at the ceiling. He could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the image of a cage. He saw the face of someone who had lost everything, someone whose people had been murdered, someone who was about to be sold and tortured. He told himself it was not his problem. He told himself he had his own troubles. He told himself that the galaxy was full of suffering and he could not save everyone. But the image would not leave his mind. Around midnight, he gave up trying to sleep and walked to the common area. Was already there, sitting in the dark with a cup of cold tea. Could not sleep either, she asked. Sat down across from her. No. We are not seriously considering this, said. Tell me we are not. Did not answer. Sighed. The Duke is one of the most powerful beings in this sector. He has an army. He has connections everywhere. If we steal from him, we will be hunted for the rest of our lives. I know. We could die. I know. Was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, what does your gut tell you? Thought about it. He thought about the war, about all the people he could not save, about all the times he had looked away because it was easier. He thought about 80,000 credits, about fuel and food and survival. And then he thought about a woman in a cage, waiting to be sold. My gut tells me I will not be able to live with myself if I do nothing, he said quietly. Nodded slowly. She did not look surprised. Then I guess we are really doing this, she said. Somewhere in the station, aboard the Duke's magnificent yacht, a young woman with luminescent skin sat alone in a white room. She could feel minds moving around her, full of greed and cruelty and indifference. But tonight, she felt something new, something far away but coming closer. Hope. The next morning called his crew together in the cargo bay of the Silent Fortune. The space was cramped and smelled of oil and old metal, but it was the most private place on the ship. He stood in front of a flickering holographic display, arms crossed, waiting for the others to settle. Leaned against a stack of crates, her face calm but watchful. Sat cross-legged on the floor, already tapping away at stood apart from the group, looking uncomfortable. Had brought him aboard an hour ago, after making him swear on his life that this was not a trap. Let me be clear, said, his voice flat. This is probably the thing we have ever done. If anyone wants to walk away, now is the time. No judgment, no hard feelings. Nobody moved. Looked up from her. If we pull this off, how much are we talking about? Enough to retire, said quickly. Enough to buy a new ship, a new identity, a new life on some quiet world where the Dominion cannot reach you. And if we fail, asked. Then the Duke will make an example of us, replied. He is not known for mercy. Nodded slowly. Everyone understands the risks. Good. Now let us talk about how we are going to do this. He activated the holographic display. A detailed schematic appeared in the air, rotating slowly. It showed a massive vessel with elegant curves and reinforced armor plating. The Duke's yacht, the Gilded Throne. This ship is a fortress, said. Military-grade shields, automated defense systems, a crew of over 200 including 50 armed guards. There are security checkpoints at every major corridor, biometric locks on all sensitive areas, and a full surveillance network watching everything. Whistled softly. That is a lot of security for a pleasure yacht. The Duke is paranoid, explained. He has many enemies. Some of them have tried to kill him before. He learned from those experiences. Studied the schematic with narrowed eyes. Where is the being kept? Pointed to a section on the lower deck. Here. Deck 7, Section C, it is a specialized containment cell designed to block telepathic abilities. The walls are lined with neural dampening material. She cannot reach out with her mind and others cannot reach in. Can you get us inside? Asked. The engineer chewed her lip, thinking. The surveillance network is going to be the hardest part. I can loop the camera feeds, but I will need access to a maintenance terminal first. If I can get in physically, I can do the rest remotely. There is a service hatch on the starboard side, said. Maintenance workers use it to access the outer hull. Security is lighter there because it is not meant for passenger access. That is our entry point, decided. You will stay on the Silent Fortune and run Overwatch, and I will go in through the service hatch. Frowned, just the two of us. The smaller the team, the lower the chance of detection. We get in, we get out. Simple. Nothing about this is simple, muttered, but she did not argue further. Stepped forward. There is something else you need to know. The Duke is hosting a gala tonight on the station. All the important people will be there. Most of the ship's senior staff will attend as well. It is the best window we are going to get. How long will the gala last? Asked. 4 hours, maybe 5 if the Duke is in a good mood. We will not need that long. Can you have everything ready by tonight? Was already typing furiously on her. Give me 6 hours. I need to crack their encryption protocols and map the internal network. It would help if could get me any security codes he has access to. Nodded, I will give you everything I have. Looked at each member of his crew in turn. These were the people he trusted with his life. They had been through so much together, smuggling runs gone wrong, close calls with law enforcement, bar fights that turned into firefights. They had always survived because they worked as a team. But this was different. This was not just another job. They were going up against one of the most powerful beings in the sector. If they made a single mistake, they would not just lose their freedom. They would lose their lives. Any questions? Asked. Raised her hand. What about the neural tracker? The what? The said grimly. She has a tracker implanted in her skull. If she leaves the ship without authorization, the Duke will know immediately. He will be able to follow her anywhere in the galaxy. Felt his jaw tighten. Can it be removed? Yes, but it requires surgery. Or at least, someone who knows what they are doing with a medical scanner and a very steady hand. Grinned nervously. I have disabled tracking devices before. Never one implanted in a person, but the principle should be the same, I think. You think, repeated. 70% sure, maybe 80. That is not exactly reassuring. Held up his hand. We will deal with the tracker when we get to it. First priority is getting on that ship and reaching the. Everything else comes after. The crew spent the rest of the day preparing. Buried herself in code, her fingers dancing across multiple as she mapped the security network of the Gilded Throne. Provided her with every piece of information he had. Guard schedules, access codes, maintenance routes, and the personal habits of the Duke's senior officers. Cleaned and checked their weapons. They could not carry anything too obvious, so she selected small plasma pistols that could be hidden under clothing, along with a pair of stun grenades for emergencies. She also packed a medical kit because always expected someone to get hurt. Walked through the plan again and again in his mind, looking for weaknesses. There were too many things that could go wrong. The security feeds could fail to loop properly. The guards could change their patrol routes. The might be too weak to move on her own. The Duke might return early from the gala. Any of these things could doom them. All of them together would certainly kill them. But had learned long ago that no plan survived contact with reality. The key was not to have a perfect plan. The key was to adapt when things went wrong. And things always went wrong. As evening approached, the station came alive with activity. Shuttles carried guests to the grand hall where the Duke's gala was being held. Music and lights spilled out into the corridor. The rich and powerful gathered to celebrate themselves, to make deals, to show off their wealth and influence. Watch from an observation window as the guests arrived. Men in expensive suits, women in flowing gowns, aliens of every species, all dressed in their finest. Among them he spotted Duke himself. The Duke was massive, standing nearly 3 meters tall. His skin was dark purple, almost black, and covered with intricate golden tattoos that marked his noble lineage. He wore armor even to his own party, a subtle reminder that he was a warrior as well as an aristocrat. His eyes were cold and yellow, like a predator scanning the crowd for prey. Felt a chill run down his spine. This was the being they were about to rob. Having second thoughts, asked, appearing beside him. No, just appreciating the difficulty of what we are about to do. The Duke does not look like someone who forgives easily. He is not, said, joining them. His face was pale. I have seen what he does to people who cross him. There was a merchant once who tried to cheat him on a cargo deal. The Duke had him skinned alive in the market square, left the body hanging for a week as a warning. Grimaced, thank you for that lovely image. I am just saying, be careful, both of you. Checked his chronometer. The gala had started. In 30 minutes the Duke would be seated for dinner. That was when they would move. He touched the plasma pistol hidden under his jacket. It was warm from his body heat. Real. Solid. A small comfort in the face of what was coming. He said into his communicator, status report. Her voice crackled back. Camera feeds are ready to loop on your signal. Guard rotations are confirmed. Service hatch is unmonitored. You are clear to approach in 15 minutes. Copy that, stand by. Turn 2, she looked calm, but he knew her well enough to see the tension in her shoulders. She was scared, so was he, but fear was not the same as hesitation. Fear kept you sharp. Fear kept you alive. Ready? He asked. Pulled on her jacket, hiding her own weapon. Let us go steal an alien. They left the silent fortune and made their way through the station. The corridors were quieter now, with most of the station's wealthy inhabitants at the gala, perfect conditions for what they had planned. The Gilded Throne was docked at a private berth reserved for VIPs, and circled around, avoiding the main entrance where guards stood at attention. They found the service hatch exactly where it had said it would be, hidden behind a cluster of fuel conduits. His voice came through the communicator. Camera feeds are looped. You have a 15-minute window before the system runs a diagnostic check. After that, I cannot guarantee anything. Pulled out a small device and attached it to the hatch's locking mechanism. The device hummed softly, then clicked as it bypassed the security code. The hatch slid open, revealing a narrow maintenance tunnel lit by dim emergency lights. He looked at one more time. No words were needed. They had done this dance before in other places against other enemies. The danger was familiar if not comfortable. Took a breath and stepped into the tunnel. The metal was cold under his feet. The air smelled of recycled oxygen and machine oil. Somewhere ahead, in the belly of this floating palace, a prisoner waited for freedom. He had come here for a gambling debt. He would leave with something far more valuable. The maintenance tunnel was barely wide enough for one person. Moved first, hunched over, his shoulders brushing against the cold metal walls. Followed close behind, her breathing soft and controlled. Every few meters, small lights flickered above them, casting strange shadows that made the tunnel feel endless. His voice was a whisper in his ear. "Take the next junction on your left. There is a ladder that leads up to Deck 7. Found the ladder and began to climb. His muscles burned from the awkward position, but he forced himself to move quickly. Every second they spent in these tunnels was a second closer to discovery. At the top of the ladder, a small hatch blocked their path. Pressed his ear against it and listened. Nothing. He pushed it open slowly and pulled himself through, then reached back to help. They emerged into a corridor that was completely different from the maintenance tunnels. The walls were white and sterile, like a hospital. The floor was smooth and clean. The air had no smell at all, as if it had been scrubbed of every molecule that might carry a scent. "This is Deck 7, confirmed. Section C is about 50 meters ahead. There should be a checkpoint between you and the containment cell." "How many guards?" asked. "2 at the checkpoint, possibly one more patrolling the section." And moved forward, keeping close to the walls. Their footsteps made almost no sound on the polished floor. As they rounded a corner, they saw the checkpoint, a small station where 2 guards sat behind a console looking bored. The guards were tall and silver-skinned with the elegant features of their species. They wore the Duke's colors, black and gold. Their weapons hung at their sides untouched. They clearly did not expect any trouble. "Signaled 2. She nodded and pulled out a small device from her pocket. A stun grenade. Not enough to hurt anyone permanently, but enough to knock them unconscious for several minutes. She tossed it. The device rolled across the floor, unnoticed by the guards until it was too late. There was a flash of bright light and a sharp crackling sound. Both guards slumped forward, their heads hitting the console, and rushed past them. No alarms, no shouting, so far so good. They continued down the corridor until they reached a door marked with a symbol that did not recognize. Some kind of warning, perhaps. A sign that said, "Do not enter," in a language he could not read. "This is it," said. "The containment cell is behind that door. I am working on the lock now." A few seconds passed. Then the door slid open with a soft hiss. The room beyond was small and white. There were no windows, no furniture, no decoration of any kind. Just 4 walls, a floor, a ceiling, and a single figure sitting in the center. She was smaller than had expected, thin and fragile-looking, with pale skin that seemed to glow faintly in the harsh light. Her hair was long and dark, falling around her face like a curtain. She wore a simple white dress that matched the walls, as if the Duke wanted her to blend into her prison. She did not move when the door opened, did not look up, did not speak. Stepped into the room slowly, his hands raised to show that he meant no harm. "My name is, we are here to help you." Still she did not move, but something happened that was not prepared for. A voice appeared in his mind, not his own voice. A woman's voice, soft and sad and curious all at once. "You are not one of them." Stopped moving. The sensation was strange, like someone had placed a thought directly into his brain without going through his ears first. He had heard that the could do this, but hearing about it and experiencing it were very different things. "No," he replied out loud, "we are not with the Duke." You are afraid. The voice in his mind was gentle, not accusing. But not of me. You are afraid of what will happen if you fail. Yes. Why would you risk so much? You do not know me. Thought about how to answer. He could give her a speech about justice and freedom, about the crimes of the Dominion, about the importance of doing what was right. But those words felt hollow. They were not the real reason he was here. The real reason was simpler. Because I could not live with myself if I did nothing, he said. For the first time, raised her head. Her eyes were large and dark, like pools of deep water. There was pain in those eyes and loneliness and something that might have been hope. You mean that, she said, not in his mind this time, out loud with her actual voice. It was soft and rough as if she had not used it in a long time. Yes. Stood up slowly. Her movements were weak, uncertain. 5 years in this cell had taken a toll on her body, but there was strength in her too, hidden beneath the surface. The strength of someone who had survived when her entire species had been destroyed. There is a tracker in my skull, she said. If I leave this ship, the Duke will know. Cursed under her breath, can you tell us exactly where it is? Touched the back of her neck just below the base of her skull. Here. It is small, but it is connected to my nervous system. Removing it will be painful. Said into his communicator, we need you to come to us. Bring the medical kit. On my way, but we have a problem. What kind of problem? Before could answer, alarms began to scream. Red lights flashed in the corridor outside. The sound was deafening, echoing off the white walls like thunder. That kind of problem, said grimly. Someone triggered the security system. I am reading multiple guards moving toward your position. Growled his distraction. No, it was not. The alarm came from the cargo bay, I think. I think someone found the unconscious guards. Moved to the door, pistol drawn. How long until they reach us? 2 minutes, maybe less. 2 minutes? Not enough time to extract the tracker. Not enough time to escape quietly. Everything had just changed. She looked back at him, her dark eyes calm despite the alarms screaming around them. She already knew what he was thinking. Of course she did. She was a telepath. We have to run, he said. Now we will deal with the tracker later. His voice crackled through the communicator, panicked and breathless. They know, someone tipped them off. Get out now, get out now. Grabbed his arm as gently as he could. Can you run? I will try. They burst out of the containment cell and into the corridor. The alarms were even louder out here, mixed with the sound of shouting voices and running feet. Somewhere close by, guards were organizing a search pattern. They would be here soon. Took the lead, her pistol raised and ready. She moved with the confidence of someone who had been in many bad situations and had always found a way out. Stayed close to, supporting her when she stumbled. Left at the next junction, said. There is a maintenance access that leads to the cargo bay. They turned left. The corridor ahead was clear but could hear footsteps getting closer, heavy boots on metal floors. The guards were closing in. Suddenly pulled on his arm. Wait, there are 3 of them around the next corner. Stopped immediately. She trusted this telepathy without question. That trust might save their lives. How far? Whispered. 10 meters. They have not seen us yet. Pointed to a side door. An equipment storage room. They ducked inside just as the guards rounded the corner. Through the thin door he could hear them passing, their voices urgent. Sector C7 is clear, moving to C8. Copy, the intruders cannot have gotten far. Lock down all exits. The footsteps faded, counted to 10, then opened the door slowly. The corridor was empty. Move, he whispered. They continued through the ship, guided by his voice and telepathy. Twice more they had to hide as guards passed by. Once, they turned a corner and came face to face with a patrol. Shot both guards before they could raise their weapons. The bodies fell silently to the floor. Sorry, muttered to no one in particular. Finally, they reached the cargo bay. It was a massive space filled with crates and containers of every size. The Duke's collection realized art, weapons, treasure from across the galaxy, all stolen, all bought with blood, was waiting for them near a service hatch, medical kit in hand. She looked terrified but determined. I can remove the tracker, she said, but I need 5 minutes and she needs to hold very still. We do not have 5 minutes, said. She was watching the entrances, pistol raised. Then we make 5 minutes, replied. He checked his weapon. Start working and I will hold them off. The first guards appeared at the far entrance, opened fire. The cargo bay became a battlefield. Plasma bolts flew back and forth, striking crates and burning holes in metal walls, and fought side by side, using the containers as cover. They were outnumbered and running out of time. But they were also human, and humans, as the galaxy had learned many times, did not know when to quit. Worked frantically on his neck, her hands steady despite the chaos around her. The sat perfectly still, her eyes closed, her face pale with pain, but she did not cry out. She did not flinch. Almost there, muttered. Almost got it. She held up a tiny metal device, no bigger than a grain of rice. The tracker. It was covered in blood, but it was out. Slumped forward, breathing hard, caught her and helped her stand. We need to go, said, right now. Looked at the service hatch. It was their only way out, but between them and freedom more guards were arriving, too many to fight. And then, over the ship's intercom, came a voice that made blood run cold. Human filth. It was Duke. He was watching. He was close. You think you can steal from me? I will hang your bodies from my gates. The Duke was coming, and when he arrived there would be no escape. Looked at his crew, at the narrow hatch that led to freedom. Run, he said. Get her to the ship. I will buy you time. Grabbed his arm. No, we do this together or not at all. There is no time. He pulled free from her grip. Go, that is an order. For a moment looked like she would refuse, but then she saw something in his eyes, a certainty that would not bend. You better survive this, she said fiercely. Then she was gone, pulling and through the hatch. Turned back to face the oncoming guards. He checked his pistol, only a few shots left. At the far end of the cargo bay, a massive figure emerged from the shadows, Duke in person. His golden armor gleamed in the emergency lights. His yellow eyes burned with rage. Stood his ground, one man against an empire. Somehow he smiled. The Duke moved like a predator. Each step was slow and deliberate, as if he wanted to fully understand what was coming. His elite guards spread out behind him, weapons raised, waiting for the order to fire. But the Duke waved them back. He wanted to do this himself. A human, the Duke said, his voice like gravel grinding against stone. Of course it would be a human. Your species has always been a nuisance, crawling out of your little planet, spreading across the galaxy like vermin. Did not move. He stood among the scattered crates, his pistol at his side. There was no point in shooting. His small weapon would barely scratch the Duke's armor, but he could buy time. Every second the Duke spent talking was a second his crew used to escape. You stole from me, the Duke continued. You stole my most valuable possession. Do you have any idea what she is worth? She is not a possession, said. His voice was calm. She is a person. The Duke laughed. It was an ugly sound, cold and cruel. A person. She is the last of her species, a relic, a curiosity, and you thought you could just take her from me. I did take her from you. That is why you are so angry. For a moment the Duke's yellow eyes flared with rage. Then he regained control. You have spirit. I will give you that. Most humans beg for their lives by now. They cry and plead and promise anything if I spare them. I am not most humans. No, you are just stupid. The Duke moved. He was faster than anything that large had any right to be. One moment he was standing 20 meters away. The next moment, he was right in front of, his massive fist swinging through the air. Dove to the side. The fist missed him by centimeters and slammed into a metal crate, denting it like paper. If that had hit him, every bone in his body would have shattered. He rolled behind another crate and fired his pistol. The plasma bolt struck the Duke's chest and did nothing. The armor absorbed it without even a mark. "Is that the best you have?" the Duke asked. Kept moving. He could not fight the Duke directly. The alien was too strong, too fast, too well protected. But he had something the Duke did not have: desperation. And desperation made humans do impossible things. He noticed a cluster of fuel containers stacked against the far wall. Pressurized gas, used for welding and maintenance. If those exploded... The Duke charged again. Dodged barely, feeling the wind from the aliens passing. He fired again, not at the Duke this time, but at the fuel containers. The explosion was massive. Fire and force erupted across the cargo bay, throwing off his feet and sending him sliding across the floor. His ears rang. His vision blurred. For a moment, he could not remember where he was or what he was doing. Then he heard the Duke screaming in rage, and everything came rushing back. The explosion had not killed the Duke. Of course it had not, but it had staggered him, thrown him off balance. His armor was scorched and dented. One of his arms hung at an awkward angle. Forced himself to stand. Every part of his body hurt. Blood ran down the side of his face from a cut on his forehead, but he was still alive. "You dare," the Duke snarled. He was struggling to rise, his injured arm making it difficult. "You insignificant creature, you dare to harm me." "Humans are stubborn like that," said. He was already running toward the service hatch, leaving the wounded Duke behind. The corridor beyond was chaos. Alarms screamed. Emergency lights flickered. Crew members ran in every direction, confused by the explosion. Nobody paid attention to the bloodied humans stumbling through their midst. Found the hatch that led back to the station and pushed through. His legs felt like they were made of water. His lungs burned with every breath. But he kept moving. He had to keep moving. His voice crackled in his ear. "Captain, are you alive?" "Barely," he gasped. "Where are you?" "The ship. We made it to the ship. But the Duke locked down the docking clamps. We cannot leave." "I am on my way." He ran through the station's corridors, pushing past startled civilians and confused security officers. News of the explosion was spreading fast. People were panicking, not sure if the station itself was under attack. When he reached the docking bay where the silent Fortune waited, he found standing at the entrance with her pistol drawn. Her left arm was wrapped in a bloody bandage, but she was still fighting. "You look terrible," she said when she saw him. "So people keep telling me." They rushed aboard the ship together, was in the engine room working frantically at the controls, sat nearby looking pale but conscious. She met's eyes and nodded once, a silent thank you. "The clamps," said. "Can you override them?" "I am trying," replied through gritted teeth. "But the Duke's security codes are layered. Every time I crack one, there is another behind it." Looked at the external monitors. More guards were arriving at the docking bay, and behind them, limping but still moving, came Duke. His armor was damaged, his face was twisted with fury, but he was not stopping. He would never stop. "How long do you need?" asked. 3 minutes. "You have 2. He grabbed a plasma rifle from the weapon locker and headed for the ship's cargo ramp, followed him without a word. They stood at the top of the ramp, watching the guards approach. "If we die here," said quietly, "I want you to know something." "What?" "You still owe me money from that card game on Nexus Station." Despite everything, laughed. "I will pay you back in the afterlife." The first guards reached the ramp and opened fire. It was a desperate fight. The guards had better equipment and better positions, but had the high ground and something to protect. They fought like demons, dropping guard after guard, forcing the others to take cover. A plasma bolt caught in the shoulder. She cried out and fell back but kept firing with her good arm. Stepped in front of her, shielding her with his body as he continued to shoot. He shouted, "Now would be a very good time." Almost, got it." The ship shuddered as the docking clamps released. Swoop of triumph echoed through the corridors. Hit the button to close the cargo ramp. The last thing he saw before the doors sealed was the Duke standing at the edge of the docking bay, watching him with those cold, yellow eyes. Then the Silent Fortune's engines fired, and they were moving. Dragged herself to the cockpit and dropped into the pilot's seat. Her movements were shaky from blood loss, but her hands were steady on the controls. She had flown through worse. Strapped himself into the co-pilot's chair. "Get us out of here." "On it." The ship burst out of the docking bay and into open space. Behind them, the massive form of 7 stations shrank rapidly, but they were not safe yet. Warning lights flashed across the console. "We have company," said grimly. 3 Dominion security vessels were breaking away from the station, moving to intercept. They were faster than the Silent Fortune and much better armed. In a straight fight, ship would not last 5 minutes. "Can we outrun them?" asked. She had come to the cockpit leaning on her for support. "No," replied, "but I can outfly them." She pushed the engines past their safe limits. The ship groaned in protest but responded, surging forward with sudden acceleration. The pursuing vessels fell back slightly, surprised by the burst of speed. Ahead, an asteroid field drifted in the darkness. Massive rocks tumbling slowly through space, a graveyard of ancient collisions. Most pilots would not dream of flying through it. The chances of collision were too high. Smiled, "Hold on to something." The Silent Fortune dove into the asteroid field like a fish diving into coral reefs. Hands danced across the controls, making tiny adjustments every second as she weaved between the tumbling rocks. Left, right, up, down. The ship twisted and spun, dodging obstacles that seemed to appear from nowhere. Behind them, the security vessels hesitated. Then, one by one, they entered the field as well. "They are still following," reported. "Not for long." Executed a maneuver that should have been impossible. She flew the ship directly toward a massive asteroid, waited until collision seemed inevitable, then pulled up at the last possible second. The ship screamed past the surface with meters to spare. One of the pursuing vessels was not so lucky. It tried to follow the same path, but the pilot was not fast enough. The ship clipped the asteroid and spun out of control, crashing into a second rock and exploding in a ball of fire. "One down," said, "2 to go." The remaining vessels were more cautious now. They spread out, trying to box in the Silent Fortune, but had grown up flying ships through dangerous terrain. She had learned to pilot in the ruins of Earth's orbital debris field, where one wrong move meant instant death. This asteroid field was nothing compared to that. She led the pursuers on a chase that seemed to last forever but probably only took minutes. She used every trick she knew: sudden stops, sharp turns, using the asteroids themselves as shields. One more vessel fell behind, its engines damaged by a glancing blow from a tumbling rock. The final vessel was piloted by someone who knew what they were doing. They matched moves almost perfectly, staying close despite everything she tried. "I cannot shake them," admitted through gritted teeth. Spoke up, her voice weak but determined. "I can help." She closed her eyes. For a moment nothing happened. Then over the radio they heard confused shouting from the pursuing ship. The pilot was making mistakes, jerking the controls, fighting against something. "Their minds," whispered. "I can touch their minds just for a moment, just enough." The final vessel swerved wildly and crashed into an asteroid. The explosion lit up the darkness of space. Let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. "We are clear." The edge of the asteroid field was just ahead. Beyond it, empty space stretched to infinity, and somewhere out there, a jump point waited to carry them away from this system forever. They had done it. Against impossible odds, against one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, they had done it. Slumped back in his chair, his body ached, his head throbbed. He was covered in blood, half of it his own. But when he looked back standing in the doorway of the cockpit, he felt something he had not felt in a long time. Pride. "Thank you," said softly, "for everything." Nodded, "Do not thank me yet. We still have a long way to go." The silent fortune reached the jump point and engaged its faster-than-light drive. Reality twisted, colors blurred, and then they were gone, leaving nothing behind but empty space and the wreckage of their enemies. Behind them on the station, Duke stood at a window and watched the space where the ship had been. His arm throbbed with pain. His pride burned with humiliation. But beneath the anger, there was something else, something he had not felt in a very long time. Fear. A human had beaten him, a single, insignificant human. The Duke turned away from the window. This was not over, not by a long way. The hunt was just beginning. The faster-than-light journey lasted 12 hours. 12 hours of tension, of watching sensors for any sign of pursuit, of wondering if they had truly escaped or merely delayed their capture. 12 hours of exhaustion so deep that even fear could not keep it at bay. Spent most of that time in the medical bay, letting patch up his wounds. The cut on his forehead needed stitches. 2 of his ribs were cracked. His entire body was covered in bruises that would take weeks to heal. "You should be dead," said as she worked. The explosion, the fight with the Duke, the gunfight at the docking bay, any of those things should have killed you. "Humans are hard to kill," replied. "We are too stupid to know when to give up." Laughed, though there was little humor in it. "That is probably the most accurate thing you have ever said." In the next bed over was recovering from her shoulder wound. She had lost a lot of blood, but had managed to stop the bleeding and clean the wound. She would be sore for weeks, but she would live. "How is it?" asked. Resting in one of the crew quarters. The tracker removal took a lot out of her, and using her telepathy against those pilots did not help. She needs time to recover. Nodded, he understood that feeling all too well. When the ship finally dropped out of faster-than-light travel, they found themselves in a quiet corner of space, far from any Dominion patrol routes. A small moon orbited a gas giant in the distance, its surface covered in ice and shadow. No settlements, no stations, nothing but empty darkness. "Perfect." Pulled himself out of bed, ignoring the protests of his injured body, and made his way to the cockpit. Was already there, sitting in the pilot's seat despite her wounds. Some habits were hard to break. "Where are we?" he asked. "The system. Nobody comes here because there is nothing worth taking." She gestured at the frozen moon on the. "We can hide here for a few days while we figure out our next move." Our next move. Sat down heavily in the co-pilot's chair. "I am not sure I know what that is." "We could sell," said quietly. "There are buyers who would pay millions for the last. We could disappear. New names, new identities. We would never have to work again." Looked at her. "Is that what you want to do?" Was silent for a long moment. Then she shook her head. "No, but I needed to say it out loud, to remind myself that it was an option." "It was never an option," said. "Not really." "I know," smiled slightly. "I just wanted to hear you say it." The door to the cockpit slid open and stepped inside. She looked better than she had during the escape, though still fragile. Her pale skin had regained some of its natural glow, and her dark eyes were clearer. "I heard my name," she said softly, "and I felt your thoughts, both of you." Shifted uncomfortably. He was still not used to the idea of someone reading his mind. "I hope we did not offend you." "No, you comforted me." She moved closer, looking out at the frozen moon. "All my life I have been running. When I was a child, the hunters came for my people. My mother hid me in a cave and told me to be silent. I stayed there for 3 days listening to the screams. When I finally came out, everyone was gone. And exchanged glances. Neither of them knew what to say. For years, I moved from planet to planet, continued. Hiding, always hiding. There were people who protected me, who risked their lives to keep me safe. One by one, the Duke's hunters found them. One by one, they died, until I was alone. You are not alone anymore, said. Turned to look at him. There were tears in her eyes, but she was smiling. I know, that is why I am telling you this. You need to understand what you have done for me, not just saving my life. You gave me something I had forgotten how to feel. What is that? Hope. The word hung in the air between them, such a small word, such a powerful meaning. Appeared in the doorway, looking uncomfortable. Sorry to interrupt, but I have been going through the ship systems. We are low on fuel, food, and medical supplies. We can hide here for maybe a week before we have to move. Nodded. Where is the nearest safe port? There is a trading post about 3 days from here. Independent territory, no Dominion presence. But word might have spread about what we did. We will need to be careful. We are always careful, said dryly. They spent the next few days in a kind of quiet recovery. The ship drifted in the shadow of the frozen moon, its engines powered down to minimize any signal that might be detected. Slept more than he had in months, his body finally forcing him to rest. When he was awake, he found himself talking with. She was curious about humans, about their history and culture and strange habits. She asked him about Earth, about the wars that had shaped humanity's expansion into space, about the things he had seen and done. In turn, she told him about their cities that floated on clouds of psychic energy, about their art, which was created through pure thought and emotion, about their peaceful way of life, which had made them seem harmless to the empires around them. That was our mistake, said one evening as they sat in the common area. We believed that kindness would protect us. We believed that if we did no harm would come to us. We were wrong. The universe is not kind to the weak, agreed. But that does not mean kindness is worthless. What do you mean? Look at us. We are not heroes. We are smugglers, criminals, people who live on the edge of the law. We had every reason to ignore you and walk away. But we did not. Because somewhere, buried under all the selfishness and survival instinct, there is still a part of us that cares about doing the right thing. Consider this. You think kindness is like a seed. It can be buried, but it never truly dies. Something like that. She smiled. I like that idea. On the 4th day, called everyone to the cockpit. Her expression was serious. We have a problem, she said. I have been monitoring long-range communications. The Duke has put a bounty on our heads, all of us. 10 million credits alive, 5 million dead. Whistled, that is a lot of money. Enough to make every bounty hunter in the sector come looking for us, agreed. We are going to be hunted wherever we go. Absorbed this information calmly. He had expected something like this. The Duke was not the type to let an insult go unanswered. Then we keep moving, he said. We stay ahead of them. We find places they cannot follow. We survive. For how long? Asked. As long as it takes. Stepped forward. There may be another option. Everyone looked at her. The Dominion is not the only power in the galaxy, she said. There are others who oppose them. Resistance groups, independent systems, even some of the other great empires. If we can reach them, if we can bring them proof of what the Duke did to my people, there might be protection. There might even be justice. Felt a spark of something in his chest. Not hope exactly, more like possibility. You want to fight back, he said. I want to make sure what happened to the never happens to anyone else, and I cannot do that alone. She looked at each of them in turn. Will you help me? There was a long silence. Looked at his crew, at who had followed him through a dozen close calls and never complained, who had saved their lives more times than he could count. They were his family, not by blood but by choice. He thought about the life they had lived, the running, the hiding, the constant struggle to survive. Was that all there was? Was that all there would ever be? Or could they be something more? "I am in," said suddenly. "I mean, we are already criminals. We might as well be criminals with a cause." Shook her head, but she was smiling. "You are all crazy, you know that, right?" "Is that a yes?" asked. "Of course it is a yes. Someone has to keep you idiots alive." Turn 2. "Then I guess you have your answer. We are with you, whatever comes next." His eyes glistened with tears again, but this time they were tears of joy. "Thank you, all of you." Clapped her hands together. "Great. Now that we have decided to take on an evil empire, can we please get some food? I am starving." The tension broke and they all laughed. It was a strange sound in the quiet ship, but it felt right. It felt like the beginning of something new. Later that night, stood alone in the cockpit, looking out at the stars. They spread across the darkness in an infinite carpet of light, each one a sun, each sun perhaps orbited by worlds full of people with their own hopes and fears and dreams. Appeared beside him, her shoulder now properly bandaged and supported by a sling. "We never did get some money," she said. Laughed. He had completely forgotten about the debt that had started this whole adventure. 80,000 credits had seemed like so much at the time. Now it felt like nothing. "Put it on his tab," he said. Chuckled. "He is probably dead. The Duke does not leave witnesses." "Then I guess we will never collect." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, danger waited. Bounty hunters were sharpening their weapons. The Duke was planning his revenge. The galaxy was as cruel and uncaring as it had always been. But also out there, somewhere, was the possibility of change. The chance to make a difference. The hope that one small crew on one battered ship could stand against the darkness and not be swept away. Thought about his life. About all the choices he had made, both good and bad. About the people he had lost and the people he had found. About the strange path that had led him from a gambling debt to a desperate rescue to this moment, standing at the edge of something he could not name. He had come to collect 80,000 credits. He was leaving with something far more valuable. The Silent Fortune's engines hummed to life, and the ship began to move, leaving the frozen moon behind. Ahead, the stars beckoned, full of promise and peril. And the crew sailed on, into the unknown, carrying with them a rescued soul and a new purpose. Proof that in a galaxy of empires and monsters, sometimes the most dangerous thing was a human who decided to give a damn. The hunt was on, but for the first time did not feel like prey. He felt like something else entirely. He felt alive.